Hi, I'm Ginny Robertson, founder of the On Purpose Woman Global Community and founder and publisher of On Purpose Woman magazine. I'm here with Laurie Morin to talk about her article in the January-February issue of On Purpose Woman magazine. Laurie, hey, thanks for being
Hey,
with me.
Ginny. Good to see you.
I'm excited to talk about your article for a lot of reasons because I love how you write and I love what you write and it always resonates with me. But I wanted you to tell our viewers what you want them to know about you. Let's do that first.
Um, well, I'm in my at least third phase of life, and I retired from being a law professor, and now I'm a writer full time. And, you know, I've come to accept myself a lot more than I ever did when I was younger. I
Mm,
think that there are certain benefits to growing older. Um, and feeling more comfortable in your skin and feeling more
yeah.
comfortable with who you are. So that's what I would say about me.
Okay, thank you for that. I interviewed a woman named Sarah Santacroce earlier today, and Sarah created an organization called Humane Marketing.
Mm,
And she had an article, she's doing a series of articles in the magazine about how to market like humans instead of like us like
mhm,
machines and so forth. And we talked about that as well, about that it's hard to market your business if you don't know who you are. Otherwise, you'll do it like everybody tells you to do it, and it won't
yeah,
feel right for you, or where you show up, how you show up. So the first thing, don't we wish we'd all had that in the college or high
mhm,
school course,
mhm,
right? How to discover who you really, really, really are, right? And
exactly.
so, yeah, but and as you write here too, it's an ongoing thing, isn't it? There's no end. It's
There is
always
no
just a
end.
more of an opening, I guess. Well, your article, I get articles a number of ways in the magazine. Some women will pitch me ideas. Some women will send me an article and say, I wrote this for something else. Is it a fit?
Mhm.
And with you, and this happens with a few other people, I get your blog, your newsletter, and I always read it because it's always great. And then something will resonate, and I'll go, Lori, can I use this in the magazine? And fortunately, you always say yes.
Of course.
And this particular one, the title is let's see, the title is The Alchemy of Personal Storytelling, Transforming Old Stories into New Beginnings. And you start by talking about the gremlins in your head or in our heads that tell us all the reasons why we can't do something.
Right.
And this came up for you when you decided to write a Substack newsletter. First of all, tell everybody what Substack is for those who don't know. And then what was going on for you? Why did those gremlins start to show up, do you think?
Um, so Substack is a platform that was made specifically for writers to connect with other writers. So there's all kinds of people on there, from Elizabeth Gilbert, to unknowns like me, but we're all interested in sharing personal stories, basically
Nice.
what it's about.
And it's
And
free, and you can also support specific writers there as
so
well, correct?
it's free to join,
Mhm.
and you can follow most people for free. There are a few people you have to pay to get a
Mhm.
subscription, but they're probably worth it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
for most people, you can follow them for free. And what's nice about it is it's a place where people like to read.
Mm,
So, sometimes you put stuff out on other platforms and you don't know if anybody is really interested or reading what you wrote. Maybe you get a couple of likes. But if you write something on Substack and it resonates with people, you'll get a lot of comments and
mm,
feedback.
mhm.
And so it's just a nice way to build your community. I find it a very supportive place to kind of experiment with what I want to say and put it out there, get
Nice. So
reactions.
no pressure to be perfect then,
No,
huh?
no. We're all in progress.
Exactly, exactly. So what was going on? What were you going to do that was bringing up these little gremlin thoughts for you?
hmm So, as you know, Ginny, I wrote a book a couple of years ago, and I'm now working on a second book. And the second book kind of transmuted itself. It was going to be a memoir, and it decided it wanted to be historical fiction instead. It's a genre I've never written in. I know nothing
Mhm.
about it. And I decided what I would do is on Substack, I would serialize some of the chapters. So I would write a chapter, put it out there, maybe write a little story about the backstory because it did come from parts of my life.
Mhm.
But I think the reason the Gremlins came up is because it was a new form. I wasn't an expert, and I don't know about you, but I grew up with that, you know, be a good girl, be perfect. If you can't do it perfectly, don't do it at all. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, so it was kind of scary. And the gremlins, you know, they come from all the different people who have told you things in your life, whether it's a teacher,
Yeah.
a parent, whoever. And some of mine would just say, "You're so boring. Why would anybody want to read about your life?"
Ooh, did somebody actually tell you that? Or did you
More or
tell yourself
less,
that?
more or less, they did,
Wow.
you know, vanilla. And I
Oh,
probably was because I
mm,
was afraid to be myself.
okay. So
So
you were following some rules back then. Yeah.
a lot of rules, a lot of rules.
Mhm.
Yeah. So anyway,
And so
they
when that
they just,
started, oh,
you
go
know,
ahead.
they talk to each other, you know. Well, not only that, but I know so and so told you you're a good writer, but you're really not that great. Look at so and so, they're better. And
Hmm.
they just go on and on. And I think I mentioned in the article, I usually do remember this one time I went to see Elizabeth Gilbert talk, and she talked about the Gremlins. And of course, she's a famous writer. And she wrote
Yeah.
best-selling Eat, Pray, Love. Um, and she said, they're going to come up in your head. And what I do is I tell them, okay, get in the back seat. You can come along for the ride, but you're not in control.
I'm driving.
I'm driving.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
driving.
That's so great.
So
And you started to remember that and just decided
started to
to
remember
relegate
that.
your come to get in the
Hmm.
back, right?
And
Yeah.
also, I did used to try to be perfect. I also was known as being very stubborn. So I was going to do this whether it
Okay.
scared me or not, it was going to happen. So
That's a good thing. The stubbornness is a good thing, huh?
sometimes.
Like, yeah, sometimes, yeah. Like you can't make me not do that. I'm gonna show you, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you wrote this in the article, and you said, I've been writing since I was old enough to hold a pencil in my chubby little hands, but I
Hmm.
never thought I would share my writing with anybody. I
Hmm.
finally reached the point where I know who I am, and I know that my stories can help others the way my favorite writers have helped me. And you mentioned, I think it was three different women writers
Hmm.
who have helped you. Would you just say a little bit about each of them and how
Sure.
they helped you? I know Elizabeth Gilbert, obviously, from
Yes,
the
she was
gremlin
one
piece,
of
but
them.
maybe there was something else. I don't know. So,
Yes. Um, yes, the other thing about Elizabeth Gilbert that inspired me is that I saw from her book Eat, Pray, Love how travel could be a form of transformation.
mm,
And I love to travel, but these are some other gremlins I had. Oh, that's so frivolous. It's nice to reward yourself with a vacation, but that's not really what your life is about. Whereas for me, it's like travel is a core experience for me to get out of my own perspective and see the world from other people's perspectives.
mm.
And I think reading her book was the first time I realized that I could connect those two things and that travel just didn't have to be going sipping margaritas on the beach.
You want to go do some real stuff and meet some real people and do
Real
some
people.
go into those
Hmm.
places that everybody doesn't go to, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. And you also mentioned Julia Cameron.
Yes. Well, Julia Cameron um, is kind of my role model. She wrote The Artist's Way years and years and years ago, and she's parlayed that into a handful of books, all talking about creativity, but from different aspects.
Hmm.
But what I loved about her and what I learned from her is it, she doesn't call it this, but it's kind of the brain dump. that
Yeah.
you have to sit down and get all the garbage in your head out on paper before you can really try to write something creative. And
Mm.
that's what morning pages are for. And so I don't do them religiously, but when I get stuck or have writer's block, I'm just unmotivated to write anything else. I'll pull out the morning pages and start doing them again.
Ah,
So
so many people who say that I just pull out the morning pages and start them again because it is a real Bible for some
yeah,
people.
yeah.
And I actually met her. I think it was either in 98 or 99 when I worked for the Whole Life Expo.
Mm,
She was one of the speakers. And I think the Artist Way, I don't know if it had come out. It must have been out because she probably wouldn't have been doing this circuit if it hadn't. And I bought the book and I did morning pages a lot back in the, late 90s, early 2000s, not,
hmm
and I wasn't writing anything specific
hmm
out there in the world, but I thought it was a great way to just clear my head for the day
It is.
and to see what was actually in there sometimes to go,
Right.
I mean, I think you're not supposed to go back and read that. It's better if you don't go back and read what was in there. But
hmm
as I would write it, I would go, where did that come from?
I know, right?
And so I think it's a great exercise, whether you're trying to empty your head for writing or some other kind of creativity, or just to start your day fresh. That's how
Yeah.
I looked at it. It's kind of a fresh start to the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree. It works that way for me too. And she's added in her later work another tool, well, two more, the artist date, which
I
is,
remember that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And, it's such a foreign concept to us, I think, that you would set aside time in your calendar just for yourself to go somewhere that's going to, feed your soul
Hmm.
and then hold yourself accountable to actually do it. I mean,
Yeah.
I struggle with it. I don't always manage to do it, but it's a worthwhile thing. And then she added in walks. And for me, walking, especially walking in nature, is where I get my most creative ideas.
Hmm.
So
Did she
she's
write a
just
whole
like,
book on just walking and
no,
creativity?
she's
Okay.
incorporated it. So now
Mhm.
she has all three tools in her
Okay. Okay.
toolbox. Yeah.
Yeah. The artist date, I remember doing some of that. And I kind of do that anyway. I don't want to call it that,
hmm
but I'm very comfortable doing it. I love doing it, but I don't make the time to do it as often
Right.
as
Right. Right.
I just, I don't make it important. And yet I'm so
hmm
filled up. I just
Yeah.
had it wasn't intentional initially because Don and I were going to go away for 5 days. We are going to a concert. We went to Ocean, at a hotel in Ocean City. And the day before, he just wasn't feeling well enough to go. And I went by myself.
hmm
And, while it would have been great for him to have been there, I always enjoy being, especially gazing at the ocean from my room or walking
Right.
on the beach by
hmm
myself. So I had a nice old big artist date.
Yeah.
And, I guess I was in my 30s when I started going away by myself for a
hmm
week. And sometimes it turned into longer. Because I remember the first time I did it, actually, no, I was like 42, I think it was, because I was married to Don and
hmm
his mom wanted to know if we were having problems because I was going away by myself. And my mother asked the same question.
Right.
He's not going with you.
Right.
He's not going with you. And so we didn't have any role models for
You
those
know,
kind of activities. I mean, it's so sad that our mothers and grandmothers didn't even know they could.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's transforming a personal story that
Hmm.
you got from them, but it wasn't yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing I love about your writing, and especially this story, is that you took these things that were really had more of a negative impact
hmm
and kind of flipped the script, if you will, to use a kind of a
hmm
cliche word, and turned it into a transformational story
Yeah.
that someone else can actually learn from
Yeah.
as well.
With the
So
help of
once
morning pages.
yes, yes. The third person you talked about, because this is also something I wanted to ask you about, was Bell Hooks. So
Oh yeah.
how did she inform your career, I guess your law professor career and
hmm
writing?
So um she's a African American woman writer who talks about the name of the book that I talk about in the article is Teaching to Transgress, but it's really about teaching students to look beyond the pat answers that they're being given in the books or by professors or whoever, and to look for their own truth. And that it's a kind of liberation, freeing your mind from orthodoxy. So I pretty much incorporated that into my teaching philosophy. You know, yes, you're learning law, you have to learn the rules, but you also, to be a complete human being, have to learn to question the rules and ask whether they're fair and just. I mean, law is supposed to be about justice, not just about keeping people in line, right?
Right.
Um, so yeah, she had a big impact on my teaching.
Do you remember about when she wrote that book? Because that's really cutting edge stuff, and it was early. I mean,
It
she was
was a long
writing,
time ago. I mean, she's not
yeah,
alive anymore. Yeah,
right, right.
yeah.
And that was probably pretty cutting edge for a professor to be talking about that, right?
Well, I taught at a law school that it was tolerated,
Oh,
but but it is pretty outside the mainstream.
so it's
Yeah.
kind of courageous to take that stand, I would think. Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe you didn't see it that way at the time, but I think it was.
I didn't. You know, the reason I didn't see it that way is because the only reason for me to teach is if I can really make a difference.
Mm.
And if I couldn't do that, then I'd find some other way to make a difference.
Okay. So you weren't really tied into whether the people in charge got, if they didn't get you and they didn't want you, then you
Right.
would just go do something else. Okay.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. That's a
Yeah.
healthy way to look at it.
Yeah.
You said that you used her framework to draft your first law review article, not law school,
Hmm.
law review article. And it was called Teaching Law as a Right Livelihood. And you said to this day, your first article is the one most cited by other law professors.
Right.
I mean, that's a really big deal.
Yeah. It kind of boggled people's minds at the time. And I went to a big symposium and presented on it. And, you know, people are dying for real human connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't get that in most professional settings. So I think it just struck a chord.
Hmm. Isn't it sad that it struck such a chord that people were going, oh, we've never heard
Hmm.
of that before,
Hmm.
bringing the human piece into law? Oh, come on
Right,
now.
right,
So
right.
you had a really great start to doing to kind of this transformational story stuff, did you not?
Yes and no. I also wrote many traditional law review articles
Oh,
and
I'm sure you did.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
You had to
it
publish,
was a
publish,
little bit
publish,
of
right?
a difficult transition. Because one thing you learn as a lawyer is never to bring yourself into it. So even as I was
Mm,
teaching students to question their beliefs and question, you know, what they were reading, I didn't share much personal story about
okay.
myself.
Yeah.
And in my family, I mean, this is an old story, that was discouraged. Talking about yourself, talking about your feelings, especially if
Mm,
there is anything negative, um, was not really, it was frowned upon. Let's put it that way.
yeah. And
So,
not yeah.
yeah. So putting
And
it out
keeping the
there in
family
writing,
secrets was really important too. Like, don't
right,
talk about
right.
what, don't you? I remember walking into the room when I was like 10 years old one day, and my parents were talking about my father was getting a raise. And I heard my mother say something about how much he would be making. And when
Hmm.
she saw me there, she just went ash, she goes, don't
Hmm.
you dare repeat that to anybody.
Right,
And I
right.
think that was my first money message,
Hmm.
you know,
Exactly.
stayed there
And
with
did you
me.
wonder what's the big secret?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
She didn't want anybody to know how much my father made. And I remember thinking, wow, he made so much. I calculated in my little girl head that, oh, that's about this much a month. I want to make that much when I grow up.
Right, right.
That's what I
Yeah.
was thinking. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
So let's
my
just,
father would not even tell my mother how much he made. Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, my mother, in an unusual, probably fashion, she handled the money. And this is in the 50s
Mm,
and 60s. And she wrote all the checks and she paid all the bills. And so she had to know what was going on. And my
right.
father
Yeah.
just gladly let her do it because he didn't want to. But he kept an eye on things, obviously. He
I'm
knew,
sure. Yeah.
knew what was going on, but he just didn't want to deal with that stuff. And so
Yeah.
she
That's
had
very
pretty free
progressive.
reign.
Yeah.
It actually was. Yeah. Yeah. So you talked in your article about some ways. I'm going to read this because I love how you kind of wrap up the article. Or actually, go into this next piece. You said, "I've learned to embrace paradox, accepting the things we cannot change while continuing to grow and change to meet life's challenges. I've grown confident enough to let my writing be informed by whatever intuitive nudge I get that day. Still, I tend to return to some of the same key themes of personal growth and transformation." And you gave us four, and I'm just going to read the titles of the four because I want people to go read your article and get the skinny on the rest of this. And I want you to pick the one that you'd like to go into more detail about.
Okay.
So, the things that you tend to return to in your writing is you embrace tuition and inner wisdom. You remember, I'm going to say, the transformational power of travel and cultural exploration. You want to do more of that. Purpose and legacy is a piece in there, and also writing and creativity for healing and empowerment. All really, really great things. Which one of those most resonates with you right this moment that you want to talk more about?
Well, right this moment, I think intuition and inner wisdom, because it kind of fits in with what we've already been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
When you grow up in a family and in an environment in the 50s and 60s where you're not encouraged to have feelings or certainly not to express them. Um, and in my family, logic was the controlling force. My father was a computer programmer, one of the very first computer programmers,
Wow.
but he had that very logical, linear mind, and that was what was valued in our family.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I've always been intuitive and empathetic, but having to hold all those things in, I didn't see their value.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only as I got older, um, and, was encouraged by the people around me, got out of my parents' sphere and got into some other environments, um, that I realized that using the right side and the left side of your brain together is much more powerful than
Yeah.
just using one side. So, in law, you have to have that logical linear side to construct arguments, but you also have to use your storytelling. You have to be creative with theories. If you have a case that doesn't look like it will be successful, you have to think outside the box and come up with different strategies. And if you put those two together, you become a much more well-rounded lawyer. So I first started playing around with that when I was a lawyer and a law professor. Um, but I think, you know, I went through a phase in my younger years where I did a lot of spiritual work, and I think the intuition to me comes from higher self. It's really a spiritual experience. Um, and I think we talked about this before. I got scared because my grandmother had premonitions, and her premonitions were always negative. They're always about something bad happening to somebody. So when I started getting kind of intuitive hits like that, I was like, oh, I don't want to go there. Um, and I didn't have any role models for how to do that in a positive way. But now, um, I think what I like most about writing now, so I tried the usual things. I tried doing a blog schedule, scheduling topics around there's this holiday coming up, it's the first of the year, whatever it is. And I hated it. It was like sitting down and doing homework. Now I get up and I say, well, time for a newsletter. What's really coming up for me that I think would be helpful for people to hear? And that's what I write about.
And
So
I'm guessing that there's a lot more joy in that for you.
there's a lot more joy in it.
Yeah.
And I think it resonates more with people because it's coming from a genuine place, not from a somehow I think some of those blog schedules are marketing. It's all
Yeah,
about
they really are. who can I get to respond so that they will
Mhm.
buy XYZ,
Exactly. Exactly.
and
Yeah.
it's again, we talked about that this morning in the humane marketing thing. It's the same thing, speak to the people who are most meant to work with you.
Mhm.
And that's so much easier than trying to, everybody's a potential client out there. We know that's not true, right?
Mhm.
And then we get all twisted into knots ourselves trying to be all those things to all those people. And
Right.
you're
Right.
right. I mean, at this stage of my life, I don't have any time for that.
No. That's for sure.
Well, Laurie, how can our viewers learn more about you?
You can go to my website, which is just my name, lauriemorin.com. I have a couple of programs on there that I'm doing in the near future. If you're interested in writing a memoir, um, that's what I'm most interested in helping people with right now. Having struggled through the process myself, I feel like I can, cut the journey short for other people.
Mhm.
Um, and you can see me on Substack. Everything's just in my name. I don't have any fancy titles or anything, so
Okay.
I'm easy to find.
And what was it? Easy for you to find? You're
Yeah,
easy. I mean, you're easy to find.
I'm
Yes.
easy to find.
Yes. Laurie's website is in the text of this video, and I will also put the link into Substack once we wrap this up today. And so, what's the most important idea you want to leave us with today?
Well, I think um, the most important thing to me is that life is, how did this person say it? You're either growing or you're dying.
Mm,
So life is all about transformation. We're always changing. You can change by expansion, or some people, as they get older, change by contracting, going back to what they know and what they feel is safe. I think choosing to expand leads to a much richer life.
beautifully said. And it brings more interesting people into your life as well.
Yes.
Because, contracting out of fear just makes our world so much smaller. So thank you for that. I love that. And I thank you for sharing your wisdom, your intuition, your guidance, your heart with us, both in the magazine and here with me on these videos. You can also go to our YouTube channel, which is the On Purpose Woman Global Community, and see more of what Laurie has written and talked with me about. And when you go to the On Purpose Woman magazine, that link is also in the text of this video. You can click on our archives and find Laurie's in probably at least half of the issues in a year. She's there a lot because I like her and I like her writing. So, Laurie, thank you again. I appreciate it. And I want to thank anyone watching this excuse me, watching the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show. For more information on the On Purpose Woman Global Community and magazine, you can click on the link below. And please, again, check out all the videos there. They're all full of great women who are living their lives on purpose and sharing their unique gifts on the planet. Thanks again for watching.
Thank you, Ginny.
Thank you. Okay, I'm having,